Pam, I met you. You're here in California. We met this past weekend at my reset talk, and you told me this story there. It blew me away, and I wanted to definitely capture this
Mhm.
for the world to hear. People need to hear this. Someone out there needs to hear this right now that's going through, if not the exact same thing, similar. They're on medications, but they're not feeling good, or they have a solution, a situation that, they might think they have to take medication all their lives, but, someone like you who took the responsibility in your own hands, you have these amazing stories when you let your body do the work for you. So this has
Well,
been fantastic. I mean, to sum it up, I mean, you were diagnosed with cancer, and then you were diagnosed with asthma, and then after 10 days of doing the master cleanse, you feel like your whole lung breathing asthma situation is totally under control whenever you do that, after even all these medication and things weren't able to do the trick, really. What I want to do is share it with a lot of the subscribers on my blog, and mostly we want to do it to give them a vision of what some of these things can do. So I'd like you to tell that story to them, right? They haven't heard any of the details. They don't know really the backstory. They don't have any ideas of what happened at the end, at the beginning. So, if that'd be great, pretend you're telling that story to them for the first time, because you're very captivated when you shared it with me.
okay. So, Terry. So what happened was in 2004, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and as a result of that, kind of ironically, I went from taking zero medications to probably like 12 to 15 medications in a matter of months.
Oh,
And really, in terms of the breast cancer, there was the operation, and it was the chemotherapy, the radiation therapy, and then there were some couple of oral medications that I had to take on a daily and monthly basis. So anyway, I started noticing some discomfort, some things like, for example, and I don't remember exactly what they were, but let's say, for example, the first thing I noticed was that I was getting migraines.
yeah.
And so because of the fact that I had, monthly doctor's appointments, I probably mentioned that. As a matter of fact, I know I mentioned that to a doctor. I don't know whether it was my oncologist, but a doctor. And so that doctor gave me a prescription for migraine medicine, okay,
Mm-hmm.
which I began to take on a daily basis. And then maybe a couple of 3 weeks or a month later, then maybe I noticed that, I had dry mouth.
Right.
And, here again, I'm given another medication. And then maybe I noticed that, my joints were aching. So now I'm given another medication. So my point is, nobody ever asked me once, when did the symptoms begin? No one ever asked me, could I correlate it to a new medication or anything. I just kept getting all these different medications added to treat these additional symptoms that I was having, and no one ever identified a legitimate root cause.
Yeah.
So that was in 2004, and probably I would say in like 2006 or so, I was visiting with my parents in their house and at their house in Tennessee, and I was bored and I was looking for something to read, and I happened to notice a book laying on the table, and I don't really remember who it was by. I think it was by a gentleman by the last name of Trudeau, but I don't remember his first name, but it was something about natural cures.
Yeah, the natural cures they don't want you to know. Oh, no, I really like that book.
Okay, so I started reading the book, and the author, you're familiar with the book. He's very passionate about his subject matter, and he was really on a soapbox. I mean, he was he was really down on pharmaceutical companies and Western medicine and corporate farming and just the food industry as a whole. Okay,
Right.
but somewhere in the book, I kind of saw a little excerpt from my life, in the sense that
Right.
he was talking about how Americans are so reliant on Western medicine, and they never treat causes. They always treat symptoms.
Right.
And how the goal is not to cure, but to manage. And you know, somewhere in that book, I got an epiphany, and I decided that I was too young to be taking the amount of medications I was taking. I also had, some problems that at that time I was probably attributing to all the medications, and I was taking all these medications, and I really didn't feel well.
Yeah.
Feel well. I didn't feel good, but I was religiously taking these medications. Symptoms were managed, but I didn't feel healthy. So,
Yeah.
so I came home where I had access to, one of the things the book, expounds is organic vegetables and so forth. So I came home back to Southern California, and I found a naturopath in L.A., and I went to see this gentleman, and he put me on my first cleanse. And my first cleanse was a organic, raw foods diet for 10 days. And what I did, because I owned a Vitamix, I just made smoothies, because
Right.
that was easy for me, something I could do on the go. And I noticed that I felt better, I felt more energetic, and I dropped a few pounds, maybe like 7 or 8 pounds, but I just felt good. And so that was my introduction to cleanses. And so, I knew that there was something to that whole foods, raw foods thing. But as I told you before, Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. Unfortunately, with me, that's not necessarily true. And I fell back into the same old habits, the same old eating regimen. And before you know it, I was back on all those medications plus some, because in 2007 I was diagnosed with asthma, which
What year was that?
2007.
Okay.
Yeah, asthma. So that was like a year after I read that Natural Cures book, and so yet another medicine added to my regimen. And so I had to take a powerful, inhaler, Advair 500 50. I think that's the most powerful prescription you can get for Advair. And
and you were telling me before that you didn't think that it was you didn't think that it was asthma, because you didn't feel like what you thought asthma felt like.
Right. I had a concept of asthma from a younger cousin growing up. He had to sleep with an inhaler, and he would actually have spells where he couldn't breathe. And I hadn't experienced it. I never felt like I couldn't breathe, but I would have chronic coughing spells. And so when the doctor told me that he believed I had asthma, I was like, no, I don't have asthma. Because also, again, I didn't believe it was something that you could get later in life. I thought, if you don't have it as a kid, I just didn't know. I was ignorant about it. And so, I went to the pulmonologist, and they gave me a test, and they said, oh, yeah, you have asthma. And yet, again, still, because it didn't match the criteria of what I thought asthma how it should manifest itself. I didn't believe it. So, so I didn't take the medicine, because I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I didn't want to add yet another medicine to the regimen. And another thing they told me was one of my strongest trigger was cold air. Now, who ever heard of that? I mean, you hear cat dander, you hear dust, you hear, but nobody. I mean, I never heard of nobody being asthma being triggered by cold air, but yes, that was my trigger. So, so I experienced what I what I recognized in retrospect was a small asthma attack. And so it was a lot of coughing, right? And so I started taking the Dayquil, and I started taking the NyQuil, over-the-counter medicine. I was self-medicating, and it wasn't helping. And I started, and I had all this mucus in my chest, and I thought, okay, I need to dry up my sinuses, so I was taking all this Sudafed, and guess what? Nothing was helping with chronic cough. And, just one night, I just woke up in the middle of the night with a severe coughing spell, and it just, again, a revelation. Oh, like 6 or 7 months ago, they told you had asthma, and they gave you all this medicine. And so I went over to the drawer, my medicine drawer. I had a whole medicine drawer at this time.
Yeah.
And so I pulled out an inhaler, and I took a couple of puffs, and lo and behold, my coughing spell ended. And that's when I said to myself, well, my God, I guess I have asthma.
Yeah.
So, again, yet another medicine added to my regimen. So,
right.
So that went on, until, let's say, 2010. My daughter came home all excited about this master cleanse that a coworker had introduced her to. And my daughter was an 18-wheeler truck driver, and she drove like some distances, like El Centro and LA, and so she was in traffic all the time. So she couldn't really do the cleanse at that time. She didn't feel like she could do it. Okay.
Right.
So she had a booklet, this little like 50-page little yellow booklet that she had that a coworker had shared with her, and so I read it. I borrowed it. I read it. And as I'm reading it, I just get this little glimmer of hope, and I'm saying to myself, I think I can do this, and certainly I had enough hope, and again, I was sick and tired enough of being sick and tired enough that I was willing to try. So about a week after reading the book, I had, gotten all my grade B maple syrup, and found a source for my organic lemons, which basically turned out to be the same neighbor who grew them in his yard, and my cayenne pepper. And the first time I did it with regular water, and used distilled water, and used spring water, just use regular water. And
right.
I would make and also in the book he advocates, I think the gentleman's name is Stanley Burroughs. He advocates making the lemonade, that's what he calls it, lemonade up fresh each time you take it. Well, I was working, and I couldn't do that. So I made a gallon up in the morning, and that's what I drank throughout the day, and I didn't eat any other food. And the first time I did it, because I wasn't used to taking in a lot of fluids, I didn't even drink water.
Okay.
That's the only thing I did, was I drank just that lemonade. And so almost immediately, within a day or two, I started really experiencing a lot of mucus, coming from my chest via my mouth, coming through my nasal passages, and basically it was coming through every orifice, let's say, except with the exception of my eyes and ears. So
wow.
if you can understand that, I mean, because one of the things that you have to do at the end of each day is to do a salt water flush,
right,
or coffee enema, or something like that. So after a couple of days, you don't really have anything in you, but
yeah.
So it's it gets so basically
whatever's coming out then, it was in there for a while.
Yeah, and so so I mean I had so much mucus coming out of my chest and my nasal that my coworkers swore up and down that I had like walking pneumonia or something.
Wow.
They were just they were panicking. They were like, go home before you make us all sick. I was trying to explain to them that I wasn't really sick, that it was just a form, because I read it in the book. I knew what was happening to me, that my body was cleansing. And so,
Good.
they can't make you go home, so, they didn't, I was popular, but I didn't go home. And so that was my first healing crisis. In the book, I think it's called Healing Crisis in the book. And
Yeah.
that is an indication, a healing crisis is an indication that your body is actually healing itself. It's getting rid of all these waste byproducts on a cellular level from your body. And I think the second healing crisis I had was a little pain in my left sinus right at the bridge of my nose. Felt like I had on ill-fitting glasses on the left side. And
Wow.
up until that point, I never even recognized that I had a sinus problem. I mean, I didn't take sinus medication, one of the few medications I didn't take. And but apparently there was something going on in my sinuses because I experienced that pain there. That lasted for about a day and a half. And
what day did that start?
the sinuses?
Yeah.
About the third day.
Okay.
And then around about the fourth day, I got low back pain. And it was so crazy because I got up that morning, showered, dressed, went to work, and I used to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning. And about 10 o'clock in the morning, I got up from my desk, and it was like a really sharp pain in my low back. Like I had tweaked my back or some kind of way or something.
Right.
And I would get up and I would walk like 5 steps and I could straighten up. But immediately upon rising and the first like 5 to 6 steps, it would just be excruciating. And this happened throughout the day, and I was trying to figure it out because I didn't. It's not like I slept wrong because I didn't wake up with that pain. And so, just on a hunch, towards the end of the day, at work, I Googled, low back pain associated with the master cleanse, and it
the kidneys, huh?
To all these blogs where people were talking about experiencing the same kind of discomfort as a result of the cleanse, and their kidneys being
overworked.
Yeah, or just a healing crisis, something just now that meant to me that now my cleanse is working on repairing damage to my kidney, for example.
Good job. Good.
And so that only lasted about 2 days. So now I should be probably around about day 6. Okay, so that lasted till about day 6. Now, on the evening of, like, day 5, in the middle of the night, I'm laying on my side, and my knees are uncomfortable. Oh, I skipped something. I'm sorry. No, that's right. So my knees are uncomfortable, and I don't, that's one of my favorite positions to sleep in, and I never was uncomfortable around my knees at that before, and so I couldn't figure it out, and I finally drifted off to sleep. But the next morning I got up and I looked at my knees, and I figured out that there was a lot of inflammation around my knees, fat, in other words, around my knees that had prevented my kneecaps from touching each other when I was resting on the side. There was a lot of fat in between my thighs and around my knees, and so before the master cleanse, when I laid on my side, there was all this fat cushioning it, and so my kneecaps didn't touch, and it wasn't uncomfortable. But now they were able to touch.
So you lost so much weight in those first 5 days, your knees started touching.
Well, and what's so ironic about it is I didn't notice it, but my coworkers were noticing it. They were saying, Pam, you are losing a lot of weight, so, and it looks good on you. What are you doing? And I was like, I'm not really doing anything. I mean, because I really wasn't thinking of it as a diet.
Yeah.
And I just, I had so many other things I was noticing. I ironically wasn't noticing my clothes per se. And so, and probably, I think I took this out of order. I think around day 4, the evening of day 4, another healing crisis was, again, I was laying on my side, and I literally felt some kind of like crackling movement going on in my chest cavity. It was not painful to me, but I felt it, and it seemed like I could even hear some noise inside my body. And
crackling chest?
Yes, in my chest. And when I got up on the morning of day 5, I noticed that I could take deep breaths. So, and I had gone cold turkey before I started to cleanse. I wasn't taking any medication, none. And so before, when I was taking the asthma medicine, although I didn't have coughing spells, I didn't have asthma attacks, I really wasn't able to take deep breaths. It always felt like an elephant was standing on my chest. And, in the morning of day 5, it felt like I could actually take deep breaths. I felt liberated, actually, in my body. I felt it. So
that crackling was probably a lot of mucus kind of, freeing itself from your lungs, or what do you think that crackling was?
That's what I think. I think so. I think, my lungs were kind of like breaking up, and, the lungs are a living tissue, and they're probably supposed to be supple and all this, and I think they were kind of stiff and constricted by all this mucus encasing them, from all of these, bad things that were in my body, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, so I think, that was pretty much all the healing crisis I had. That took me up to probably, day 7, I think was, I think the knees or the morning of day 7. And then I didn't really feel anything. I still was having a little mucus, but nowhere near, like blowing my nose, but nowhere near like what I had like day 2, day 3, day 4.
Right.
And so day 10 came and went, and I got on the scales, and lo and behold, I had lost, I think it was 22 pounds.
Wow.
Those 10 days. Yeah, and what's so what's great about it is I was able to go to work. I was able to sit in the lunchroom with my coworkers while they ate their regular food. I didn't feel deprived. I didn't feel weak. The first 3 days were hard. Because I had a lot of physical discomfort, and it wasn't the discomfort like hungriness discomfort. It was a lot of, aches and pains, and I didn't really I wasn't thinking about my stomach. I was thinking about all this other stuff that I was doing.
Right.
I never, my stomach wasn't growling. I didn't feel depraved. Just had a lot going on, and so, like I shared with you, as a result, the lasting thing that I can see in terms of the Master Cleanse is that it is a way that I manage my asthma now, as opposed to taking medications.
Right.
If I have an asthma attack, it's getting cold here in Southern California now in the evenings, so if my body's kind of in balance, the cold air won't bother me,
Right.
But if it's a little bit out of balance, then I'll have an asthma attack. I do a Master Cleanse for a day to 3 days, and I'm good.
Wow.
So.
Well, Pam, I want to thank you for taking the time. I know you're moving around, running your real estate career, but I want to thank you for taking the time to share your message with all my subscribers on the ResetYourBody.com site and everyone in the world. So let's see what we can do to keep the good news flowing, okay?
Oh, yeah, my pleasure, Terry. I'm not as talented as you are, but I am as excited about, health as you are. So, you know, anytime I can help you or anybody else, you know, especially in terms of the master cleanse, because I am a disciple, then, you know, just let me know.